Welcome back to BestGuessistan. This is the place where we explore rupture, that thing that split your life into before and after, the system's failures that rupture often reveals, and some surprising routes to repair and survival on the other side. I'm Wendy Lurie, and in today's episode, we're not going to explore a specific type of rupture. Instead, we're going to explore a specific type of system, a system that's uniquely well-positioned to support people going through rupture, but often lacks the training, the tools, or the permission to do so. HR. HR is the bridge between organizational priorities and human realities. And when those realities shift, whether due to injury, illness, loss, grief, caregiving, menopause, any identity-shifting transition, many find those bridges missing or cracked or constructed only of policy and procedure. HR is where rupture and bureaucracy collide. It's where human reality comes up against compliance, capacity, and corporate discomfort. Because these moments can and often do define whether an employee feels supported, punished, or erased. Today we'll explore what HR can be, not gatekeepers or administrators, but enablers of a system that's based on flexibility, empathy, and humane infrastructure. Let's get started. Our guest today embodies modern HR leadership. Marlo Green is a strategic HR executive and chief human resources officer with over 20 years experience shaping organizational design, building talent strategies, and creating rich cultures across Fortune 500s and high-growth startups. Marlo operates where most leaders hesitate, at the intersection between corporate goals and human reality. Because when human reality shifts, whether due to identity, illness, capacity, or circumstance, a lot of the traditional playbooks start to fall apart. In BestGuessistan, we refer to that moment as rupture, when you realize the life you're living is no longer compatible with the person you've become or are becoming. Marlo's work exists deep inside that tension, working to design systems that don't just manage people, but support them through uncertainty and reinvention and return. With her deep expertise and vast experience, Marlo is joining us today to explore what HR can be. Legally compliant, of course. Operationally effective, absolutely. But also humane, adaptive, and designed for real lives. Welcome to BestGuessistan, Marlo.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad you are. Listen, before we get into systems and policy and possibilities, let's start with the basics. Let's start with you. Tell us about you, how you got into HR, what has kept you in HR. Just give us your HR backstory.
Sure. So a long time ago, many years ago, I used to be in marketing. I worked for a leader who was absolutely terrible. So we won't name names. And he created a really difficult work environment, not just for me, but for the people I worked with. And it got to the point where we were 3 companies in this building, and another company's HR saw what was going on. They went downstairs and told our HR what was going on. And our HR, we used to refer to it as dysfunctional family counseling. Our HR tried to do some counseling of with this manager, tried to step in, intercede, and made our lives a little bit easier. And then I didn't know what HR was. I didn't know what was possible. And to see HR step in and to see it make a difference in not just my life, but the life of my teammates as well, I was like, I want to do this, and I don't want anyone else to have to come to work and feel like I felt, my teammates felt, where we just felt like we weren't, whatever we contributed wasn't good enough. And so I left marketing. I then took a huge pay cut, went to a well-known distribution company, and started at the bottom and have worked my way up over the last 20 some years. So I went from an administrator of HR all the way up to most recently, I led a global tech firm led HR globally, and I have since started my own firm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you stayed in, you've seen HR change over the years.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and the changes you've seen?
I definitely can. So one of the things that I've seen really interesting with HR, we used to spend a lot of time pushing papers, and the old guard that I'll say that came before me, that was what they did. That was what they were comfortable with. I feel like I have always been a visionary. I've always thought ahead of the curve. I've always thought about what HR could be. So when I was at that distribution center, and I was just an administrator, but I created something with the onboarding called How to Get Fired at this company. And it was really successful. It dropped attrition rates, but I learned that people didn't understand what the rules of engagement were, because historically HR was pushing papers. So then HR became more of, hey, let's think about how we want to move. So now HR comes from a more strategic lens, but unfortunately, the people who have trained HR professionals now, they haven't trained them how to be more strategic because of the fact that they're the old guard. So we need to think from a more strategic lens, think about how we can impact the overall company, think about how we can impact the bottom line. When I worked in manufacturing, they used to always tease me that HR does not make the pounds. But I would say we don't make the pounds, but we hire, train, and support the people who do, and the people who manage them.
That's exactly right. So a much more people-centered, less paperwork-centered approach.
Yes. And we want to get people out of the mindset really that HR is for the company, because at the end of the day, the only way to be for a company is be for the people. If we create processes and streamline processes, we support managers, we support people, then people will feel more psychologically safe. People will come to work. They will feel like they can provide input, that they can affect the bottom line. Then they're more productive. When they're more productive, then the company is better for it.
That's a sea change, though, right? I mean, there is a lot of work to persuade people that HR is actually on their side. Yes. You're right. When you track it through everything you said, it makes perfect sense. But the lived experience of a lot of people is that HR protects the organization more than the individual.
Right. And so it's really up to us as HR leaders to change the perception. The biggest thing that we can do is manager engagement, because 80% of the time people interact with their manager and their team. But if their manager makes it miserable, like, my story, then the team isn't as successful. But managers really, really determine a person's experience at work.
It's true. I had an old boss who said that. They said people don't leave companies, they leave their managers, they leave their boss.
Absolutely.
So you've heard me talk about Rupture. You know the BestGuessistan ethos.
I do.
And Rupture takes many forms. And we're not here to talk about a specific one of those today. We just want to talk about sort of the HR reaction to Rupture. When Rupture, if you don't mind using the language, or if you don't want to use it, the hell with it, call it whatever you want. But when people show up with these things, when they overnight had to deal with becoming a caregiver, or got hit with a divorce, or a diagnosis, like what happens? How does that show up at work?
It shows up at work. It's little fissures, little cracks. What happens with a rupture is people come to work. It happens with your best performers. It happens with, it happens across the spectrum. People start to withdraw. People don't necessarily talk about it, because if you have a culture that creates an environment where people don't feel comfortable talking about it, that means they don't have their trust in leaders. That means they don't have the trust in managers or HR. So that's what it starts to look like, little cracks. It starts to impact productivity. Impactivity starts to affect the relationship with them and their manager. It starts to affect them and their relationship with their team, because if there's the perception that they are not pulling their weight, then the team starts to create a narrative. And people don't always come to work and say, this is what's going on. because people are really afraid to say, I have this going on, because it's perceived as weakness. And when you're perceived as weak, when it's perceived as weakness, then people they don't feel safe. They don't feel psychologically safe. And then it can impact, because a narrative has been created, it can impact their job performance. It can impact promotion. It can impact opportunity. So people would rather hold it in. And then also you have a generation that's thinking, you know what, this is what's going on with me, but at least it's not this, or at least I don't have to deal with this. So I can just suffer silently, because this is my cross to bear.
You actually addressed the question I was going to ask you now, which is the silence question and what stops people. I mean, I agree with you. I do think it reads for a lot of people in a lot of organizations as a sign of weakness. And all that does is actually weaken everything around it when people do stay silent. But it's a real challenge. What about, I mean, some of these ruptures are visible, right? I mean, someone, breaks their ankle and they're on crutches. You can see that, right? But a lot of the things that go wrong are invisible, right? There are things that are going on in people's lives that they may not want to share. And you're seeing cracks and fissures, but how do you approach more of an invisible issue than a visible one?
So when someone sprains their ankle or breaks their leg, you see them physically coming in on crutches. You're ready to come and accommodate them. People will readily say, hey, let me grab your bag for you. That might be too heavy to carry. Go ahead and get to your desk. We don't see the invisible bags that people carry. So one of the things that HR can do to maybe make it better, when I was in corporate America, one of the things that I did was I did check-ins with people. I didn't care what level you were in the organization. I had check-ins scheduled, and they were maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but it checked in with people. It created the human aspect of HR. And I really genuinely wanted to know how people were doing. And so it wasn't really about, hey, what's your manager doing? It wasn't one of those got you moments, but I wanted to create the human to human connection so that then they would feel comfortable coming to me. But then I continued the human to human connection, because if someone said something to me about, I like crocheting, then great. Next time I see an article about crocheting, I have made a note. I'm going to forward this to you and say, hey, I know we talked about crocheting this. So that person knows that I've kept them in the forefront. I've built the relationship. I'm building the relationship, but I'm building a relationship based on trust. And it's just the intersection of what we both like. I once did that check-in, and I had someone say, well, you know, she got on, she didn't trust what the check-in was about. So she was just like, I don't have anything to say to you. I said, oh, it's no pressure. I just wanted to see, how you were doing, and just tried to break down her barrier. And I said, well, have you read any good books lately? Well, no, I don't like to read. I said, okay. I said, and watching any TV? No, I don't own a TV. I said, oh, okay. You have any pets? No, I don't have any pets. I don't. I said, so what do you do outside of work? And it was something really minute that she was like, oh, it's no big deal. I just do this. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I once did it. Let's talk about it. And we got into a really great conversation about something that was her passion. And then I was able to, and exactly what I said, I sent her some information that I had found just a couple of days later or a week later. And then we kept having the conversation, and it built a relationship, and it started to build trust. So I think that that's really important, because for me, the human connection is really what makes companies great.
Agree. And you're putting the human back in human resources. I'm assuming that, but you can tell me, and I don't need hard data, that approach with the check-ins actually did help build trust and maybe help people come to you when there was something going on, or made you aware that there was something going on with them, and therefore there was less of this silence and silent suffering and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to really build relationships with employees, and the employees did feel comfortable coming to me. And then, more important than me, so if I take myself out of it, the next connection I wanted to make was with managers. So I believe very strongly in training managers. I believe very strongly in giving them manager toolkits. So giving them just, and not just saying, hey, here's your toolbox, go away. You have to constantly have that conversation. So I would build manager training, and to make it easy to remember, it was the third Thursday at 3 o'clock every month. And so
That's memorable.
yeah, it's memorable, but
Third
it's something
Thursday.
like, yeah, 333. So it really supported them, and we talked about things, and I gave them standard approaches, standard ways of dealing with something, and that is what is needed. So I gave them like life event protocols. If someone comes to you and they say, "Hey, this is what's going on," then this is how you deal with it. This is the verbiage that you use, because if you have to think on the fly, you're often going to just come out with your first response, and it may not necessarily sit well. And then it becomes impact versus intent. Your intent may have been good, but the impact the employee felt was, hey, I can't come to you anymore. Right. So creating things like that for managers, but then also before they can even implement those tools where the employee comes to them, I have to get managers to the point that they build that relationship with employees where the employee trusts them.
How hard was that?
That's hard because managers often are drivers, and the first line managers are often the first line of defense between higher ups and the average everyday employee. So they're getting beat up from both ends.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get them to think from a strategic lens of, hey, be proactive with your employees, schedule one-on-ones, get to a point where you can give them feedback, and guess what? And that they can give you feedback. It doesn't have to be hostile, but it's to help each other grow. And when you go into companies, you always find one or two managers where people are like, this place could not run without them. That's because they've learned to put those tools in your toolbox. They've learned to really focus on the people, because if you focus on the people, I guarantee you every time the people are going to show up for you, they're going to be more productive, and the bottom line is going to increase.
Those are very wise words. And we've also seen that in actual fact and lived experience, and it is totally true. Okay, now let's talk about let's pull a little bit back from your own experience, but also what you've seen. Where work helps with these situations of people going through this kind of thing, and where it doesn't. So when HR gets it right, what does that look like? What are they doing that's different? What are the policies? What are or procedures? Like what makes it work?
When HR gets it right, I truly believe we have a more autonomous workforce. People feel empowered to do their jobs. We focus on results. We don't focus we focus on supporting people in the journey, but we don't focus on driving every little detail. I read somewhere that more companies are using software for people who work remote to figure out when they're working or how they're working and then people are buying tools to make it look like, so it's a cyclic thing. And that's not productive, because if people can feel like, I know that this is my project, I need to get this done, and I can bring it to the table, and that's what I'm measured on, not how I do it, not when I do it. I think that's what makes people more successful.
So those kinds of systems and approaches make it better.
They do. I do believe that they make it better. We just really have to focus on engagement and focus on results. We should not really focus on, unless it's an automated process where people have to be on a manufacturing floor. If someone is salaried, you've hired this person. I strongly believe when you hire someone and you're the manager and you make the choice, you hired them for a reason. You have to trust people to do the job that they're assigned to do. And if they don't do it, it's a performance issue, and you manage that offline. But you don't, one of my favorite managers used to always tell me, rules are made to punish the many for the few. And And this company that I used to work for one time, really, they had made the best places to work, I want to say 5 years in a row, maybe
Mhm.
6, but they had more autonomy, and they lived by the principles that were written out by the original owner. And those principles are what people, they doing your job was important, but it was more important how you interacted with others, how you engaged others, how you supported your team, and that was the score that you got. So, and your performance score was based on that more than the actual job that you did. But it was a very productive environment. It was, again, best places to work, and I really felt like people were supported overall.
Okay, that's great. That's when HR gets it right.
That's when it gets right.
That's when it gets it right. What happens when HR or the systems of HR make it worse? What are some of the things that make it worse, and how does that kind of play out?
What makes it worse is when HR doesn't know what HR should do. When HR is reactive versus proactive, too many HR people are reactive. And it's not that they don't want to be proactive, it's just that circumstances are making it, and they're being driven from the top. And HR is just like drowning. They're drowning in their own paperwork, they're drowning in their own systems, and they have no time to say, let me carve out 15 minutes because I'm building the strategic relationships. Let me carve out, an hour a month in order to set up our managers for success. That's when HR starts to get it wrong, when they're only thinking in the moment.
And also probably when they get too caught up in process.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do a thing that I've been doing with every guest.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you what we call the magic whiteboard. Okay? And the magic whiteboard is your opportunity to basically redesign the system, any piece of it, all of it, some of it, with no limitations. Nobody's saying no. It comes with a dry erase marker that really does erase. And you just get to fix HR specifically in terms of how it supports people going through the kinds of things that we're here talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? The whiteboard.
I would start with the candidate experience, because you're onboarding people from the moment they apply for the job. You're bringing them into your culture from the moment they apply for the job. I would change that experience to let them know how our culture works. From that point on in the interview process, one of my best talent acquisition people, I'm sure you've met her, I think, Alexia Benrose. She was amazing in the interview process, and we were able to recruit talent that we would not normally recruit for, because Alexia would take the time, and and it was more strategic from her interview processes, and really delve into our culture and give people, an idea of how we work, because people will know at that point if it's a good fit or not. But you want to start there. You want to start in the interviews when you're bringing them on board. Once you made the offer and you're bringing them on board with your company, take the time to onboard people properly. Take the time to welcome them. Take the time to not just HR welcoming them with their offer letter. Managers, take the time to send a note. Take the time when they get there to really, sit down. Here's your agenda. Here's all the tools that you need. This is our culture. Our culture is one where we're prepared. And let people see how they can be successful in 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. I've had companies where I went to work and it's been, oh my God, it's so crazy. I'm so happy you're here. Here's everything you need to do. And I had to figure it out. But I've had companies where they're like, you're important to us. And because you're important to us, here's all the tools that you need to be successful right now that we can think of. And these are the tools. If you think of anything else that we may have failed at thinking at, let us know and we'll handle it for you. That's what success looks like. It's constant touch with the manager in the beginning. It's feedback. And feedback, again, goes both ways. and it's ongoing conversations. It's mentors,
Mm.
um, it's performance management, and really it's opportunity. And it's opportunity to be able to communicate, to be able to make connections. It's opportunity to go further in an organization. And so that's kind of how I would start my perfect start for an employee. I would also give managers a really, I would almost take managers away for 2 days and just say, here's everything that you need to know. 2 days a year is not much because, again, it's my whiteboard. So,
It's your whiteboard,
it's my
exactly. You
whiteboard.
can take
So
it for 3 days. It's your
yeah,
whiteboard.
up to 3 days, and then enforce it every third Thursday. Um, but that those types of things are so important because the managers are going to make the employee experience better. Employee feels empowered to now make their own decisions as it relates to their work. I once worked at a company that literally said to me, "You are the CEO of your own desk, and you should manage it accordingly."
That's interesting. That's
It's
interesting.
very interesting, but that's also the same company that was best workplace for or 6 years in a row.
Not surprising.
Because yeah, because they set the rules, they set the values, and people worked accordingly.
So that's amazing. What specifically would you do to help make the workplace safer for people to share the kinds of things they're going through? Not like in a maudlin therapy way, but in a way that will let their managers, let HR know that they may need accommodations, that things may not be as fine as they seem. How do you create that safety?
I think that that's also
Right.
modeled. It's okay. It's not only modeled by managers, but it's modeled by the C-suite. It's modeled by upper leaders who can talk openly about this is what's going on with me. This is what happened to me once upon a time. So I value the import. I value creating safe spaces for people. So I would love to have leadership talk more about their own struggles because we tend to look at leaders, especially in the C-suite, and we're like, man, they got it made, and there
We
is
know
a
the truth.
yeah, we absolutely know. I was once in the C-suite. I didn't get there by accident. It was a long, hard struggle. But we're taught you keep a stiff upper lip and you go and you project confidence and you project this, but we're never taught to be vulnerable. So it starts with upper management. It starts with again managers and creating safe spaces like ERGs,
Mhm.
creating with the ERGs. Think about how ERGs look now versus when they looked 20 years ago.
Could you explain? Those have come up actually in another interview, but if you could just talk
Mhm.
about ERGs, some of they're called BRGs, and what they are and what they represent in the workplace, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's an employee resource group. So typically, 20 years ago, it was the Black Employee Network, the Asian Employee Network, the Women's Network, the Hispanic Network, the
Veterans.
veterans, LGBTQ plus. But now it looks a little different. Those networks still exist, but now it's the neurodiversity network. Now
Present.
it's absolutely, and now it's the single mom network. Now single dad network.
Hmm.
So or caregiver network. Dealing with aging parents. Networks can expand and grow, so we should make sure that we're modeling those things. When a company has those types of resources for employees, then employees feel more psychologically safe. And if not only they attend, but if they see a senior leader attend, then they're like, it's a safe space for me to be in, only because it takes time away from work, and that's okay. But taking an hour a month to attend the ERG is not really a big deal. But people tend to feel like it's a big deal when the manager's coming down on them. When the team is like, oh God, here she goes again. She's leaving to go, take care of her mom, and her mom is still sick. Little things like that creates an unsafe environment where people don't feel like they can bring their best self, meaning that they you can't leave your problems at the door.
No.
We were taught in my generation, you leave your problems at the door, you come in and you work, and then your problems aren't a bag that you can leave at the door and come back and pick it up. They stay with you. And especially in this society we're in now, we're more connected than ever. So we're constantly connected to our problems, but we need to figure out ways where employees can have their problems, can deal with their problems, and also deal with work and deal with what they need to do and still be productive.
That's great. And amen to all of that. One last set of questions before we get to the last thing, which is your ministry assignment, which I'll explain in a second. Just very specific practical guidance, okay, for different groups of people, like in this world of rupture and its repercussions. Mm-hmm. So if someone is going through this in the office, in the workplace, how do they protect themselves and their dignity?
That's a question that I don't know if I can necessarily answer because it looks different for everybody. For me, protecting myself and my dignity, I'm a sharer. So I will openly share what's going on in my struggles, and because I believe in being transparent, especially with my team, because I want my team to be transparent with me. For other people, it looks like, hey, I'm being private. I don't want to share because they don't have that trust. I would just say the best thing to do is create psychological safety and psychologically safe zones for people, so that if they share or don't want to share, either way, it's okay. But it looks like, how can I support you? Mm-hmm. So for me, that's the biggest question, is ask everybody, how can I support you? What does support look like for you?
Right. And you answered this question, and I thought it was really interesting. If someone's a leader and comes to you and says, I'm not relating well to my team, there are things going on, like, what would you tell them to do differently tomorrow? Is it the vulnerability piece? Is there?
Well, I will find out what they're doing today. And most leaders who are saying, I have problems relating to my team, it's often an impact versus intent, because they can start doing the right things, but the intent may be, I really want to build this relationship with my team, but the impact with the team is, why is he talking to me so much? Does he think I'm not doing something right? So oftentimes with me, one of the things that I always did with my team was say, this is my intent of doing this. So I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be taking these actions because here's my intent. I don't want you to feel a negative impact. Mm-hmm. So I talk about intent and impact quite frequently with teams.
I think that's great framing. I really do, because no matter how well-intentioned something is, if it lands wrong, the intention just melts away and all that's left is the effect. So yep. I'm with you. Okay. So about colleagues, like someone's going through something, right? And they're part of a team, they have peers, and the person going through it might want their support, might not, but definitely doesn't need like pity or just like over identification. I went through this too. Like, how do you coach the colleagues of someone who's going through something?
I just coach them to have empathy and to understand that, you have to meet people where they are. If they come in and they share with the team, hey, to use a sick parent, for example, hey, I'm caring for my sick parent. What does that mean? It means that I may not be in meetings that don't pertain specifically to what I'm doing. It means that I'm only available during these hours. And then I may be sending emails to you late at night because I'm catching up on the time that I missed. And that means that you don't have to take action because you're getting an email at 3 a.m. It just means that that's the time that I can carve out to be at work. And so I would also coach people that if someone is dealing with this, side comments, gossip, are not necessary and not needed and not part of the culture that we're trying to build.
That's great. And the last group I want to ask about is HR. We've talked about, there are some barriers, right? Obviously you see things differently, which is why I'm so happy that you joined us today. What's the hardest truth HR needs to face to become part of the solution to these kinds of problems?
I think that HR needs to understand that we're battling history. And the longstanding belief is that HR is for an organization. It's that part is true to an extent. So we're for an organization where we don't want the organization to get sued. We want to have the right processes in place. We want to treat people fairly. We don't want EEOC complaints. Yes, in that respect, we're for the organization. But we also are fighting the battle that we have to make people believe that, and we have to actually do it, is be for the people in creating positive cultures, creating opportunities for growth, creating opportunities where people can really come to work, they can be productive, and we have to marry the two.
I want you to be my forever HR business partner. How's that?
That sounds great.
Okay, so the very last thing, and we do this with all the guests, all of our experts who come and join us, is everyone has to run a ministry because BestGuessistan is governed by an ever-expanding bureaucracy of ministries that are there to address every possible need. And three of them were developed just this week.
Okay.
I think you should be the minister of humane systems.
Okay.
Okay?
I love that.
And it comes with a whiteboard.
Okay.
Okay? And then you get to build the systems you want, but you're building them from the human perspective, not the process,
I love that.
not the corporate. Does it fit?
It's a fit.
It's it. The paperwork is on the way. It's only a little bit of paperwork. It is confusing. It is confounding. It is BestGuessistan. There are also no wrong answers.
I'll write my own job description.
There you go. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Marlo. This was such a great conversation, and just like hearing your perspective and your wisdom. I mean, this could be game changing. We need more people to listen to you and think the way you do to address rupture in the workplace, because this is such a big problem. And I think you have so many ideas that could be incredibly helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You've been watching BestGuessistan. Today's episode featured Marlo Green, Chief Human Resources Officer, exploring how HR can better support people going through rupture. If this episode resonated with you, or you know someone who could benefit from it, please consider sharing it with them so they may find our community. And to support our work, you can like, rate, subscribe, or join us at bestguessistan.com. Until next time, and remember, in BestGuessistan, there are no wrong answers.